Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency, 504-556-0809 or davemietteINSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
Cnc Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, Cnc provides patient-centered care for your entire family. Cnc Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports, live from our Pontchartrain Production Studios. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, talk a lot about the Saints, the LSU Tigers. We'll get into the national championship as well. To break it down for us, one of our favorite guests. You ask for him all the time. We try to bring him to you as soon as we can get him out here. Mike Detillier is with us from WWL Radio and so much more. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Always good to have you, my friend. And I know this is a day that again, is special for you and a lot of people here in New Orleans. And I didn't realize it until we texted each other today, but I can remember it like it was yesterday. And, of course, that's the passing of your good friend, Buddy Diliberto.
Man, because, I go back, it's less than a week, around a week. A good friend, Carly McCord,
yes.
First year she passed away. People ask how you feel about it. And I'm like, I don't remember how they died. I remember how they lived.
There you go.
And Carly lived life to the fullest, and Buddy, he lived life to the fullest. And he wasn't the first person to put me on Sports Talk.
Mm-hmm.
Hap Glaudy was.
Right.
And God bless him. Hap was a great guy. He was transitioning from TV to radio, just like Diliberto. He was a different personality. Hap let you talk. He wasn't never going to interrupt you. Mm-hmm. Buddy, he's like the dude I work with now. You can't get 3 words out that he ain't interrupting you. So, and if he disagreed with you, he'd let you know real quick. But oh my God, the stories. I could write a book. It would be about as thick as War and Peace, the Russian version,
right,
of the stuff with Buddy. He was a character every day, and I've told this to people. That my dad and mom would never call me if I went on vacation unless it was a real emergency.
Right.
I never stopped Diliberto. I say, hey, buddy, I'm on vacation. Oh, you can go back to vacation later on. Listen, what do you think about this? And, oh, okay, I get it. And so we talked, but man, some great memories with him. He was the most unique sportscaster of our lifetime.
I agree with that.
Now, Jim did it with flair, great wording, everything. Buddy, Pete Finney told me this story. He's like, you know why Buddy sometimes gets mad at me? He said, I say the same things Buddy does, but he said, I basically do it surgical strike. It's real neat and clean. He says, What Bernard doesn't understand is he hits you over the head with the sledgehammer and then hits you again and again and again. No, and Buddy got to the point where, after the 3 hits, he was looking to hit you the 4th time, if he really wanted to put that point across. Man, some unbelievable stories throughout the years. A real quick one, this happened between him and Peter Finney.
Okay.
It was a rare LSU afternoon game. And neither one can remember why it was put in the afternoon and not at night, but it was moved to the afternoon. And just so happened, scheduling, Tulane was playing at night. So Buddy would go to the LSU games with Peter. And so Buddy would tell me, man, I get lost sometime going around the block at my house, so I can't drive, so I'd go with Pete. So he said, man, Pete gets us out of Baton Rouge. And he said, at that time, there's the I-10 and all these here and there. That's none of that back then. But he said, man, Pete knew every little highway and byway you could pass around to get around all that and to get us, to New Orleans. And Buddy's like, hey, listen, I had coin on a game like he did every week. And he bought a TV that you could plug into a cigarette lighter, and he hung the antenna out of the window and had aluminum foil on it to catch the game better. And Peter Finney tells the story that I'm driving. He said, the window's partially down, and I can hear the roar of motorcycles behind us. And he said, I take a look, and this motorcycle, and he said, then I noticed there's 2 motorcycle cops to my left. And he said, all he did was this, pull it over. So Finney pulls over. He said, we're in this little stretch of land. There's nothing around. There's a few houses here and there, but nothing. And he says, the cop parks the motorcycle, gets out, and he raps on the door. And, back then, no electric window, so Peter got to roll the window down. He was like, there's a Buddy Diliberto in this car? And Peter was like, man, I was like a pointing dog. All I did was, he's there. And he said, man, like Buddy's eyes were this big. And he was like, Diliberto, he says, somebody wants to talk to you. So Buddy says, I'm looking to put the TV down. And Finney says, in my mirror, I can see this limousine speeding up behind us. And he said, man, hits the brakes. And he said, he comes right behind me. So the cop tells Buddy, get out of the car, Diliberto. So he gets out of the car, and he says, next thing you know, he said, there's 2 cops that they talking to Diliberto at that time. So he said, next thing you know, he says, the limo opens up the door, and Buddy's sitting in the limo. And Peter said, after 10 minutes pass, man, I'm wondering if Buddy's going to come out of the limo, at that point. So he said, finally, he said, I tell the policeman, I said, can you tell me, what's this all about? And he said, the cop just did like this, no. I said, okay. So he said after about 5 more minutes, he said, Buddy gets out of the limo, and he said, I can see he's laughing it up to beat the band. So he says, all of a sudden, man, they crank up the motorcycles. They looking to take off. He said, by the time Buddy could make his way around to get into the car, because he said, man, we right on the edge right there by the ditch, and he says, I'm scared Buddy might fall in the ditch. He says, Buddy gets in, and he said, he just is bellowing, laughing. He said, man, all I could hear is the motorcycles. And he says, all of a sudden, I take a look to my left, and the limo almost comes to a complete stop. And he says, sure enough, the window goes down, and he said, is Governor Earl Long.
Wow.
Old Uncle Earl. And he said, he's got a white hat. And he said he pulls it out of the window, and he's tipping it like this. God bless all of y'all. Vote for Uncle Earl. Uncle Earl was here. And, and he said, I can see him. And Finney said, man, he's running down the highway with the limo. He said, it's 25, 30, 35 yards. And he said, you can hear him hollering, it's Uncle Earl. And he's holding the hat out of the deal. So he said, Buddy, what's all this about? He said, no, well, the governor sort of recognized us. They were at a little convenience store, recognized me, and he said, that must be Buddy Diliberto. He said, I need to talk to him. He said, man, I'm going to the fairgrounds tomorrow. And he said, I need some tips on the horses. Now, if you know a little bit about history, Uncle Earl on a Saturday night, he was on Bourbon Street. He was party hardy all night long. And that sort of thing. And so Diliberto adds to the story. 2 weeks later, he says, I wake up in the morning, he said, look at the paper. And he said, Uncle Earl then put him away.
Right.
They didn't put him away at
They put
this
him away,
point.
right.
You know, and Uncle Earl had a few habits, so to
Right.
speak, and he needed to be put away. But and Finney's like, man, I had my heart in my mouth. I didn't know what was going on. But he said, can you imagine the governor? He pulls you over.
Yes.
And he doesn't want to talk to you about anything more than what's racing at the fairgrounds
Right.
on the Sunday with the horses. But he knew, him and Buddy both had the
Sure.
same sort of habits. But man, Buddy was unique, in a lot of different ways. He really built the sports talk business
did.
in the state and also in New Orleans. He built it. And I'll never forget, he gets the job. Because after Hap passed away, Larry Madsen and Bruce Miller were doing it.
Yes.
And then they hired Diliberto. And he calls me up, hey, listen, I'm going to get you on some more. Man, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I'm like, man, buddy, with all those stories you got, and that set him off. And people love to hear
They did.
all those old stories. And he would tell stories here and there. And the one about he was banned from the plane by then owner John Meekum Jr. and
Yes.
told, you're banned for life plus 10 years. And Buddy's like, what's the 10 years for? He said, just in case you're the second Lazarus. He said, I'm covering my bets on it. He said, I hope you understand what that means. And Buddy said, yeah, I understand what you mean. But man, listen, every day was an argument with somebody. And that got his juices flowing. He had to, if it was somebody at the station, somebody he was pumping gas with, somebody was at the grocery store, and then he'd call and tell me about it. So I was sort of like Dr. Phil. I used to hear all that. But the best one was every morning he would call my house at 7 o'clock, go to Mass at 6:30. And Mass is real short in the morning, so he was out of there for 5 to 7. So he'd go to the front of the church and he'd call me. And, most of the time was, hey, listen, what do you think about Brigham Young and Utah State? So it was something to that extent. Right. And every once in a while you'd hear the priest come by and say, buddy, are you okay? Oh, yeah, Father, I'm fine, Father. Man, the station called. I got to do a segment with them right around 7 o'clock, a little bit afterwards. He said, okay. He said, buddy, I'm going to come check on you in a few minutes. I would always tell him, buddy, why you lying to the priest? He said, why you think I come to Mass every morning? He said, I'm looking for forgiveness and a tip that maybe God can give me. But listen, if you knew him, that's the way he was. Great guy to me, my family.
Yes.
I couldn't thank him enough for everything. And here's the worst part, Eric. I hear it now from people. Man, your stories remind me of Diliberto's stories, and I'm like, man, is that good or bad?
Right.
To a certain extent? But even Bobby J tell me that,
Right.
man, Mike, some of these stories are somewhat on the Diliberto's part of things, but great guy, and never forget him. He was tremendous to me, and great to the community.
Yes.
Was the biggest Saints fan in the world. People thought he hated the Saints.
It's true.
He absolutely loved the Saints. LSU, Tulane, he wanted them to win so badly, and I know he was somewhere, and he had money on the Saints when they won the Super Bowl, because that was his thing. I want to live long enough to see it, and he came so close,
Right.
so close to doing it. But he would have loved the Sean Payton time frame. That's all I can tell you. I tell that to people all the time. He'd have loved it because Sean's built a perennial winner here, and that's what he wanted. He knew people would get so much enjoyment out of that. We saw it with Saban.
Yes.
At LSU, we did pregame shows, national championship, that sort of thing, and he reveled in it.
Yep.
That people took so much pride and joy of seeing the hometown team be a winner.
Yeah, still to this day an icon.
Oh, no question about it.
Okay, I
No
don't
question
care.
about it.
And a guy that again will generations after us will know what he did in terms of, again, not just what he did on the newspaper side, TV, again, the infancy of that
radio.
medium, and then radio. I mean,
How
again,
many people hit
transforming
the
it.
trifecta like
Right.
he did? He worked for Stars and Stripes in Korea, interviewed Ted Williams, and that's a real long story, so I can't tell it. But he interviewed Ted, and then goes from there and is working for the newspaper. And Hap Glaude was the one who told him, get out of writing, go to TV. And I don't know what he was making at that time, but basically he doubled his salary to go to TV. And he was like, man, Hap, I don't know. I feel comfortable writing. He was like, how much you making writing? And he said, well, how much you making on TV? He said, well, they almost basically doubled my salary. He said, well, come on, buddy. Look at your bank account. You got to take that job on TV. And he didn't pronounce words well, didn't maybe have the look and everything else. But, man, he was colorful, and he made it enjoyable to watch.
Yes.
And he was informative, but he made it fun for you.
Always.
And you always had that in the back of your mind. And that was something he'd always sort of preach to young journalists about, hey, listen, you can know all these stats, you can know all this stuff, but if you don't make it fun for the listener, you know what they're doing? They turning that off today. And listen, I'm telling you, he said this back in the 90s and early 2000s. That applies today every bit as much as it did back then.
And of course, everybody knows him back in the day, the king of the bagheads, which now is not just a New Orleans thing, it is a worldwide thing.
He was on the front cover of Newsweek magazine 1980 when they did the year-end review.
Yes.
His picture of him with the paper bag was on there, and one of the bartenders at Buddy D's bar.
Was it Sports Scene? Was that what it's called?
I don't remember exactly the deal, but he's the one who gave him the idea, because remember back then it was the Gong Show and the Unknown Comic.
Yes.
And so he gave Diliberto the idea about, man, why don't you do that like the Unknown Comic? He's becoming real popular. Why don't you do that? But I don't know how that's going to play. And station director said, oh, absolutely not. So he said, as soon as he told me no, I knew it was going to be good. He said, I did.
Right.
He said it was almost like a Seinfeld with George Costanza when he had all that luck when he did the opposite. He said, our station manager, if you did the opposite, it was correct. And so he said, man, I started wearing, and all of a sudden, people went nuts over it. And it became a national deal.
It was a buzz in the city, then it became a buzz nationally. No, it was. I can remember it like it was yesterday.
And so, he made his niche, and he just was a unique guy. But I always remember him, big-hearted guy for everything. And the night they roasted him, it was him and I and Bobby Hebert. And to hear, they just like this listening. And Buddy was in rare form that night telling stories. And Billy Kilmer drops in to come, and Billy would say about how he needled Buddy all that time, because Buddy, when they had it on, at that time, Channel 12 was the ABC affiliate. Right. They needed a show. This was before From the Press Box. It became the Gary Quazzo show.
Yes, I remember.
Because he said, man, all I thought was Meredith had a show, Bart Starr had a show, Joe Namath had a show. Hey, we gave up all this for Quazzo, we got to have him on. And Quazzo became a part-time starter, and man, Billy never let him forget it. Kilmer never let him forget about it.
Unbelievable. A trailblazer. For sure.
No question.
No doubt about it. Let's shift gears. Let's talk a bit about the this year editions of the Saints. Again, just coming off a 12-4 season, beat the Carolina Panthers 33-7. First team to go undefeated in the history of the NFC South. They are now the number 2 seed. They'll take on the Bears on Sunday in the Superdome. It's a 3:40 kickoff on CBS, Nickelodeon, and also Amazon, which will be interesting. And of course, the last meeting between those two was a Week 8 meeting in which the Saints beat the Bears 26-23. When you look at these teams, what's different between the Saints and the Bears from that Week 8 meeting?
One, the Bears won't have their best defensive player in Roquan Smith. I thought it's been Roquan's best season with the Bears. Terrific player. They not get the pass rush that they thought they would get, especially from Khalil Mack. You're paying him a lot of money. You gave up a lot to get him. Year one, he was unbelievable. And then since then has not been the same guy. And not having Darnell Mooney on the offensive side. Because Darnell was the deep threat guy. Yes. And we all saw him at Tulane. Rail thin receiver, but boy, great route runner, can run with the football after the catch. So you don't have those two elements.
Yes.
And Mitchell Trubisky, who will be a habitual up and down quarterback. He ride the roller coaster with him. And sometimes it happens in the series. You see him throw good pass, bad pass, good pass, bad pass. That's just the way Trubisky is. He's a much better runner than Nick Foles. Nick is basically a box quarterback.
Yes.
You know where he's going to be. Trubisky can run with it. I just think the Saints defense is better than it was mid-season.
Okay.
When you look at this team, which has always been known, high risk, high reward, they are +9 giveaway, takeaway. But they are 4th versus the run, 5th versus the pass.
Right.
Man, it's all been about defense.
Yes, it has.
They have not given up a passer 300 yards this season.
It's amazing, right?
Think
about the quarterbacks they
It's
played.
staggering, and look at who they played.
Right.
The beatdown of the Bucks wasn't a little win. They blew them out both games. The only guy you couldn't handle was Mahomes, because I never felt comfortable in that game when you watch it.
Yes.
That okay, the Saints got this. You know, are they close? I never felt that way at all. I always felt that they were just trying to catch it, hoping that something would happen. But other than that, this football team to go 12-4 in the most unconventional season you could possibly imagine. And if I'd have told you before the season, tell me the record, and I'm going to tell you that Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, and Michael Thomas will only play 10 quarters on the field at the same time, you wouldn't have told me 12-4.
There's no way in the world you'd say 12-4.
No way. And they're averaging, scoring 30 points a game. That to me is still unbelievable.
And doing it running the football as well, right? I mean, a transition now from maybe, again, pass first to now commitment to the run.
I think it's been the two biggest changes I see from Sean from, say, the 09, 2010, 2011 year and today, more of a commitment to the running game, and especially early. If things get cranked up, and you know, come on, you're not playing with a young Drew Brees anymore. So you got to do things a little bit differently. The staggering number is this team is averaging 140 yards a game rushing. Okay, that's the best of the Sean Payton time frame into that particular deal. And I think much more emphasis on special teams.
Yes.
That, you know, you have guys on this team, if it's Justin Hardy, JT Gray, that, you know, their specialty is special teams. Will Lutz has been in a little bit of a slump, but, you know, again, he packed them through last week. He did miss the extra point, the first one of the year, but, you know, it looks like he's back on track with the field goals. Morstead has been, it's not been his best year.
Yes.
But the return game and the coverage units have been terrific.
Yes, they have.
And I think that has played a big difference in shortening the field, more patient with the running game, has put you to the 12-win mark.
Right.
You don't have to have Drew Brees play great every week to win. Before, you needed him to play great.
Yes.
And if you took out Kamara or Michael Thomas, you might be able to get by in one game, but it's going through that long schedule. That has been really the most amazing thing. And I think it has been a sea change that we see across the NFL today and also college football. 2 years ago, Louisiana Line Camp, Brian Flores is there. He's sort of quasi defensive coordinator of the Patriots. And, you know, you get 35, 40 coaches in a room, a lot of testosterone. Everybody knows everything. And Brian had enough of hearing about the passing game. And he stands up on the chair and he says, I'm going to tell y'all something right now, and listen good. Y'all all want to talk about the passing game, and that's all great and fine. We got to figure out a way to stop it. But you know what? We getting smaller, they getting bigger. You know what's going to happen? They're going to run it down our throats. Now, he says all these analytic guys aren't telling you that. That work for y'all, or y'all read on the internet and everything else, because they want to sell you their stuff. They want to sell you their idea of this is the NFL. He says, I'm telling you now, if we don't figure out a way to stop the run, they're going to feed it to us and feed it to us and feed it to us. He said, you know what happens? We play nickel 75% of the time. So I'm taking out a 230-pound linebacker and I'm putting in a 200-pound safety or corner.
Right.
If we go to dime, we're in that 60% of the time. I'm taking out another linebacker to put in another 200-pounder. Well, guess what? We're getting smaller. Look, the linemen, they're getting bigger and bigger. They're going to run it on us. We got to figure out a way to find these hybrid players that can play sort of safety linebacker, because if not, we're not going to be able to stop the run. Just not going to be able to do it. I look back 2 years ago, Flores was absolutely correct. Now, a lot of people sort of to laugh when we had that figure on 30 times or more in a game. Oh, it's just the residual of the passing game and how the game goes on. No, Sean has had great patience if they run the football early and are effective, and he carries it out throughout the game.
Right.
It's no residual. You know, again, everybody got their own little narrative of what they want to try to tell you, but it is, you cannot get away from the fact that old school football still works.
Yes.
If you can run the ball and stop the run, you winning a ton of games in this league. And that's the bottom line,
Yes.
so to speak.
When you look at this team right now going into the playoffs, again, especially putting on Deontay Harris and Michael Thomas on injured reserve, they seem to be as healthy as they can be going into the playoffs.
Listen, you're never going to be fully healthy,
Right.
but you're getting that way.
Right.
You know, with Mike, with Deontay, I really think the key in January is Michael Thomas. You got to have to throw the football. And remember Richie Pettibone telling me this. Listen, you got a flaw, come playoff time, they don't just kink the chain. They break it a lot of different ways. So you got to count on your star players to come through. And he would always talk about, man, when we had like an Art Monk or Gary Clark, we counted on them third down conversion plays. He said, I think about it even today. Patrick Mahomes is 3rd and 9. I know who he's looking for, Travis Kelce. I trust him. He's going to get me my first down and beyond most times. You think about the Packers, Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, the Saints. Drew Brees is looking at Michael Thomas.
Yes.
You're going to move the chains for me, and we're going to keep this rolling, and we're going to wear you out. And I do think he's the biggest piece of the puzzle for this football team in January, because you're going to get in those situations. And maybe teams will stack up the line or play the run like what the Chiefs did. The Saints didn't have much success running the football, so you had to throw it because you're going to have games like that. And so I think Mike is the big difference maker. And the second guy to me would be Deontay, because now he can shorten the field for you.
It's huge.
In the running game also, on the jet sweep, little short pass, but as a punt kick return guy, he can shorten the field, and maybe he makes a play that breaks a game open.
The entire running back core was back at practice. Kamara will not be able to practice this week, although everybody believes he'll be coming off COVID-19 protocol by Sunday, so he can play in the game. He will not practice. I anticipate him playing. Do you?
Yep. You know, Sean's always said, listen, I put a great stock in intelligence of players.
True.
Okay, and you know, if you know what you're doing, then we'll play you. What's one of the first things he says about Kamara every time he talks about him? How smart he is.
Yes, true.
And so I think that part of it's going to be there, and I think you're going to see a lot of Alvin Kamara.
Let's talk a little bit about what the Vikings did to the Saints, what the Rams have done to the Saints, again attacking the interior of the Saints' offensive line, especially in the passing game to try to get Brees, stop him from stepping up. We saw them very effective last year doing that. I got to believe the Bears, with their strong front, will try to emulate that and try to stop Brees, from feeling comfortable and stepping up to be able to deliver the football. How do you think the Bears play the Saints this weekend?
I think they want to stop the run first. Might sound crazy as their deal is, listen, if you're going to beat us with Drew Brees. You're not going to beat us running the football 40 times. We don't want that. We don't want to be on the field for that long. And knowing you don't have your best defensive player. Now, you might consider Khalil Mack to be the most valuable guy they have, but their best defensive player this year has been Roquan Smith at linebacker. I mean, you just got to watch him. He's been the guy for them. So, I'm playing without him. So that takes it away. I think they want to stop the run. I think they want to force the Saints into throwing the football and not having Nick Easton because, with that, we've talked about it even Monday on Sports Talk that's concerning to me. Anytime you have a player with a couple concussions and he gets nicked up, to have one concussion in 1 year is one thing. Now you got a couple, 3. And you worry about his long-term health, how that's going to affect. But one thing with Nick, he wasn't giving up. If the guy beat him, he grabbed him, you got a holding penalty. With Ruiz, when he gives up a sack, your quarterback's down.
He's standing and watching him.
And so That's concerning because we have seen the Rams and Vikings in years past attack the guards of the Saints.
Yes, and I think that's going to happen this weekend.
And I think that you will see at least some of that
Right.
This particular week. And
Right.
so what you try to do is to try to get a running game going early on so you don't have them in the sick'em mode
Yes.
every time you throw the football.
Yeah, I would agree.
But again, I think if you jump on this Bears team early, they in trouble. Because if you got to count on Trubisky to make throw after throw after throw, eventually he's going to get it picked off.
Right.
He's gonna misfire. You can see it. That's part of his game. Again, the big difference between now and the 8th game of the year is Nick Foles was basically a statue.
Exactly.
He stayed in the pocket.
Right.
Trubisky will run away
Right.
from pressure. It's maybe his best attribute at this
I agree
point.
it is. Extending plays
Right.
and allowing his receivers to get open.
You can't cover forever.
No, you can't.
And so that
Right.
particular part, and they have big, tall tight ends.
Right.
And so that, to me, that would be the other part. Defensively for the Saints, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, those guys are 6'5", 6'6". You got a 6-foot guy on him. Come on,
Right.
you're going to lose the battle there. But I do think that if you got to count on Trubisky to make all those plays, he ain't doing it.
The loss of Quan Alexander and Anzalone now back at that linebacker position.
Quan was a big loss. I thought he was a tailor-made fit
Me too.
for this defense. He's a run, sick'em, range guy, and he was, I saw him in high school, saw him at LSU. What people don't get, like Les Miles, he hated to play freshman, did not like to play freshman.
Right.
And he had told me different times that, freshmen make freshman mistakes. Quan started as a freshman until he broke his ankle at LSU. Think about that. He walks into that linebacking room and I got it. And Les would always talk about how smart he was. Yeah, he picked it up super quick. Okay, what he is in here, okay, you got to go through the COVID situation. He comes back the next week and he's a starter. So like in 10 days, he goes from being traded to being a starter on your football team. But you can't do anything about injuries. You just got to work through it. Anzalone is a really good athlete. I'd love to see him make more plays on the field.
Yeah.
I'm talking about making plays.
Right.
A tackle or a pass, deflection, whatever. He's around the play, but I want to see him make up more plays.
I'm right with you. And there's been a drop-off. I keyed in on him on the last game. Again, you could see the difference. They're just a better team with Davis and Alexander at the linebacker position. It'll be interesting to see again how Dennis Allen deals with that. We're going to take a quick break, hear from our underwriters. We come back, continue to talk about the Saints. Then we'll get into some LSU. We'll talk about the national championship. All that coming up here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Mike Detillier is our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Mike Detillier is our guest. We continue talking about the New Orleans Saints as they prepare for the Chicago Bears in the wild card round of the playoffs. Who's the biggest challenge for this team in the NFC, and if they ultimately get to the Super Bowl, the AFC?
I don't like if you got to match up against the Rams. I can't tell you why, but they're one team that you've had some difficulties with, matchup-wise, up front. And McVay up against Sean. Listen, he's moved the chess pieces around every bit as good as Sean has in those type of games. But I think the biggest challenge is certainly Green Bay. I have no fear of the Bucs. Beat them twice. They have, they don't even try to run the football. Brady ain't running anywhere.
That's true.
Okay, and again, when you get that age, some of the greatness you have is still there, but it's not there all the time. And no Mike Evans, we'll see how long that goes. But that lack of a commitment to the running game is troubling to me with Bruce Arians. If I'm talking about moving on, listen, I think they're going to have their hands full this weekend against Washington.
Yeah, I do too.
Because those guys coming off the edge, man, all I know is Donovan Smith, if Trey Hendrickson played against him every week, he'd have 30 sacks. He spun him around like a top. Now, if I'm Ron Rivera, don't I put Chase Young on Donovan Smith and say, okay, I want to see how good you are. Now, I give the rookie a little bit of credit. I think Tristan Wirfs has played better than most people thought he would.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people thought he was a better inside player. He's done a nice job at that right tackle position this year. He's done a really good job. But, man, Donovan Smith at left tackle. So I think,
I'm with you. I think Washington's
they
going to
got
give them a
difficulties.
Game. I really do. I mean, they got problems on offense, but I think defensively they are going to give Tampa all they can handle.
And because they can get an edge rush, and Brady's not going anywhere. No, he's not going anywhere.
He's like Breeze. Again, he's got to be able to step up. Brady does not like people around his legs.
And as you get older, you don't like people around you when you're throwing the ball.
Right.
Point blank. This is why Green Bay has the biggest advantage. I'm not sure where Aaron Rodgers is going to be on every play. Because he, from an ability to extend the play and improvisational skills, Russell Wilson, and you look at Aaron, those two guys in the playoffs.
Yes.
Now, again, this in the NFC. Because Mahomes can do that in the AFC.
Sure.
But in the NFC, those two guys can do it and make something out of nothing.
Right. No doubt. To me, this is one of Sean Payton's best years as a coach. Everything he's had to overcome, COVID, no off season. You get into, again, the injuries. To me, I think he's coach of the year. What are your thoughts?
It's his best coaching job since 2006. I always thought 06. First time coach, head coach. You're taking over a team, you had 28 new players on that team. You went to the NFC Championship game. I mean, that is amazing.
Coming off of what happened after Katrina.
Before. And so I always thought that was the best year of coaching for Sean. And certain things fell into place, but listen, you had to make them fall into place sometimes. But this year has been terrific. With a season of uncertainty, you have a quarterback that's in the deep winters of his career.
Yes.
And it's going to be over after this year. It's going to be over. Having to play without him, having injuries in the backfield, Michael Thomas not there, injuries up front along the offensive line, secondary, similar situation. You go out and get Quan, it looks like a great deal, and then he goes down. So, man, he's just done a fantastic job of not only motivating, but I think putting all the pieces in the right place and having people that are available that can fill in for a short time frame to get you through. He's not talking about 12 games here. He's talking about a couple games at the most, getting you through it. Sean's done a fantastic job, and in my opinion, looking in the NFC, Ron Rivera is going to get a lot of votes, sympathy. And I get it. Coming off the cancer situation, what he's got at quarterback was a disaster till Alex Smith was able to step in. But Sean deserves it as much as anybody. People are talking about Brian Flores, and I think Brian's done a great job in Miami. But you can't tell me that, what he did and what Sean did Sean, to me, deserves the Coach of the Year.
I mean, look at the injuries. Look at what they've had to overcome this season. You lose your quarterback. You mentioned 10 quarters with Kamara, Thomas, and Breeze together. Just the volatile off season. Everything. To me, hands down, he's had the best year as a coach.
You know, in the back of your mind, this band won't play the same music in 2021.
There's no doubt.
You're going to lose people because the salary cap is going to be cut dramatically.
Yes.
The credit card bill for Drew Brees is now due, $20 million.
Right.
You got to pay it. You're going to lose some front office guys. You're going to lose probably some assistant coaches. You're going to lose some players that you'd like to keep, but you can't.
Right.
You just can't financially
year.
do it. It's all chips in for this year.
I agree. You take me right where I want to go next. Jeff Ireland, Terry Fontenot. Jeff Ireland, again, head of college scouting, assistant general manager. Terry Fontenot, again, head of pro personnel, also assistant GM. Both are now interviewing for jobs within the NFC South and across the NFL. I've talked about it for years, Mike. I know you've talked about it. These two guys, especially Jeff Ireland, what they did in terms of transforming this roster. You go 3 straight 7-9 seasons. Mike, you know the draft like better than anybody else. Horrible draft after horrible draft. This guy comes in, draft transform. You now got 4 straight winning seasons, more wins than any other team in the NFL. A lot of that you point back to Jeff Ireland. You look at the Terry Fontenot, what he's done on the pro personnel side. I can think of all the bad signings, the guys that came in that were bust, dead money. Hasn't been that way. He's hit on these free agent signees. What do you think happens there? Do they lose one? Do they lose both? Do they somehow again create a position where both guys can stay? What happens?
I think because of so many openings of general manager's job, I wouldn't be surprised you lose both.
That'll be tough for this team, wouldn't it?
I think you can see it coming. You know, Terry's underrated for what he did in the pro personnel part, because you got to work with the head coach. You got to kind of know what type player he wants. Some people, man, all I know is talent. You coach him. Terry's been the type of guy to say, okay, I know the type player Sean wants, and that's the guy I'm going to go try to get for him. Jeff Ireland's the same in the college market, going out and drafting players. But you know what it all comes down to? Jeff and the scouts put that board up. They hand that over to Mickey and Sean. They rearrange that board. So you got to give those two guys credit too.
Absolutely.
Because they looking at it and saying, okay, we have the raw information here about that player, but we're going to set it up of the type players we think best fits us, and then shortening that list. Because even sometimes when you go, like at LSU, they have a board that's up and down ratings-wise, but they also have an East-West board. Okay, we got to get a quarterback, we got to get a tackle, we got to get a defensive end, we got to get a center, and this is what we look at. It's not just by the numbers board, it's also I got to fill in a need. I can't draft best player available. Come on, you overloaded on one area if that's the case.
True.
What you got to pick is the best player for you in the biggest need area, if he's there. That's what you got to fill in. And that's the toughest part of college and pro scouting, figuring out what's the best player for you that we can afford. Because, you're not playing with a ton of money here at this stage. And in 2021, you're not going to be playing with much money at all.
Right.
So who becomes the MVP of 2021? Kai Harley. He's the guy who comes up with the contracts and figures it out.
Right.
Him and Mickey work hand in hand with that. So I do think there's a strong possibility you lose both Jeff and also Terry.
Legacy of this team, legacy of the Drew Brees, Sean Payton era, if they don't win a Super Bowl this year and Brees walks away.
They become the Raiders of the 1970s. Great team, ton of wins, one Super Bowl. And who first told me that was Amy Trask. Amy was with the Raiders for a long time as the vice president. She was Al Davis's lawyer. And man, she had a heck of a job. I don't know what they were paying her, but all I know is she wasn't getting paid enough to hear Al talk all day long. But she told me, she said, looking back at the Saints, And she told me this after they lost last year. She said, you know, they remind me so much of those Raider teams of the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
When John Madden was coaching, they had great teams.
Yes.
You win one Super Bowl. The Steelers got 4.
Yeah.
The Dolphins get a couple
Yeah.
in that time frame. And she was like, it just sort of reminds me of that we were so close a couple times. And she said, what's ironic, we lose on the Immaculate Reception. You guys lose on the no call against the Rams. We lost in a crazy game to Denver that we should have won, and we get a controversial call similar to what the Saints got last year against Minnesota with Kyle Rudolph on that sort of push-off, the walk-off. Like she said, it's almost like you looking in a mirror of the Raiders teams of the 70s that would win all these games and all the expectations were there, but you only get one Super Bowl to show for it. And it said, the crazy thing is John walks away and Flores comes in and they win a couple. But like she said, that is a little bit of football luck involved with all of that. Like she said, nobody wants to talk about it. She said every doctor, every lawyer that knows everything about everything and think they know something about sports, they always want to tell you, well, luck, you make your own luck. Like you said, yeah, to a certain extent, but yet that football makes you the luck itself.
Yes.
And I do think that if they don't win it this year, it would be that. It would be almost you looking at the Raiders of the 70s, all those wins, and just one Super Bowl in 09.
Can't disagree. Let's shift to LSU. Big news this week. Actually, again, big news throughout the last couple weeks for the Tigers. Yesterday, Ed Ogeron had named Jake Pez, the offensive coordinator, 37 years old. DJ Mangus, who was with this team previously when Joe Brady was here as an offensive assistant, and more of an analyst, is now going to be the passing game coordinator. Both came from Joe Brady, very highly recommended. Now neither. The thing with Pez is he's never been a coordinator. He's never called plays. Never put together a game plan. Is this a roll of the dice for Ed Ogeron? I understand going back to the same type of offense. You want somebody that can run that offense, but is a roll of the dice going with a guy that has never been a coordinator?
Well, Ed and I has had a few conversations. One of the things he's told me is, okay, if I hire a veteran guy, the first thing media people will tell me is, well, what happened to him in 2015? His offense was 60th. What happened in 2018? His offense was 41st. So you see, you get criticized for a guy that's got experience. He said, if you hire a guy that's no experience, well, he's never called a play. So he's like, you're kind of damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If he fits what you do, Bell, that's what you're looking for. He trusts Joe Brady. I can't tell you what type of play caller Joe Pease is going to be.
Right.
I can't tell you what Pete's is going to be
right.
as a play caller. But I couldn't have told you anything about Joe Brady either.
True.
Okay, at that particular point. He's got much more on the resume than what Brady did when he walked into that room.
There's no doubt. He's got time in the NFL. He's been 10 years on, in terms of being a quarterback coach. He's got more skills than Brady ever had coming in.
The only thing I've always told people that needed to know this is you got to get younger. Because I do think in college football,
I agree with that.
You got to be able to relate to young players in a better manner. It's nice to have coaches with experience, but that connection is there.
Right.
And you could tell it with Joe, because everybody thinks Joe worked with Joe Burrow. That's not the answer.
No.
He worked with the receivers.
Right.
And you had some of the receivers say, man, Joe Brady, he's a pain in the butt. 300, 400 passes we catch a day. Their deal is what? We catching this much? But Joe was all about mental reps. You go through it and make it second nature. DJ was right there. Every practice, DJ Mangus was there with Joe Brady working with the receivers. So I can't tell. I know a little bit about DJ, and I think he'll work well with the receiving corps.
Right.
I can't tell you what type of play caller Joe Peets is going to be with this football team, but he's young. He's got experience. He's coached in the NFL. He's got a good relationship with players. Coach Christian McCaffrey just a year ago when McCaffrey had all those records.
True.
And working with Joe, I think the key here is making sure Russ Callaway doesn't get away. Because for me, Russ was the guy who's worked with the quarterbacks.
Okay.
He's worked with them. So if Russ goes, my first phone call is to George Munoz. I do know, in talking to Brady when he was at LSU, man, he loved Steve Ensminger.
Yes.
But the guy that was next to him almost all the time was George Munoz.
You saw it in the booth.
And he was right there, and Joe trusted him. He was like a second set of eyes for him. So if Callaway decides to leave, then I think I make that first phone call to Munoz and see what's happening. So I like that they went younger.
Yes.
They part of that Joe Brady.
They had to, though.
That was no
If you
question.
look at the coaches that were on the staff, they had to go younger, and I think there also is going to be a move on the staff to again have more African-American coaches as well.
Yeah, I do think that I'd be surprised. I do know it's an all-out deal for Marcus Freeman.
Right.
I mean,
he is today as we're having this show live.
He came in
today, right?
Wednesday night.
Right, and he's interviewing today.
Interviewing today, talking to him today. Now, Marcus has never been on the LSU campus. So I think he'll like what he sees when he walks in those rooms. He got $27 million in it.
Former DC at Cincinnati, or current DC at Cincinnati, but a guy that may have some head coaching opportunities, right?
We'll have it. And my thing is, I've always told this to people who ask me about a coach. And listen, if I get 1 year out of him, so what?
Right.
So what? Come on, you're not living in your grandpa's world that you stay in the same place for 30 years, you get to go and watch. I want to win now. I'll worry about 2022 in 2022. I want to win in 2021. Marcus, you can see, is on that ascent to be a head coach. Now, Marcus wants to be a college head coach.
Okay.
I don't think Joe Brady had any interest in being a college head. He didn't care for the recruiting part of it at all. And he's on the verge, I think, of landing an NFL job.
Which is amazing.
Unbelievable ride for him. But I think Marcus may decide, you know what, I got to leave Cincinnati. It might be a good thing for me. I can be on center stage with an LSU or a Notre Dame where, man, everybody's watching me.
Exactly.
Because you know what? You might say, oh, they know who he is. But that guy making that decision, that athletic director, you know what he's doing during the week? He's passing the collection.
Right.
It's a money game now, and even bigger today than ever.
Right.
Marcus now being on TV a lot, and everybody can see that at a major school is huge for him. I think he understands that.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I agree. That's why I think that he probably will make that move, as you mentioned, either Notre Dame or to LSU. Pressure on O to get it right with this next set of coaches, and the reason why I say that is Boosters have bought out Matt Canada. They buy out Bill Pelini. They buy out other coaches now that just didn't work out. At some point, you got to be able to say you get it right. The other guy's writing the check. Is there pressure on Ed to say, I got to get it right with these two offensive coaches. I got to get it right with this DC.
As he's told me, boy, I'm pressure every year.
Okay.
I ain't everybody's boy, and he's right. And the offseason, they didn't handle success. And I told you that in the summer.
Okay.
I didn't know
you did.
how they would handle success. And I'm talking about from top to bottom, how you handle success. And, I see some of these geniuses want to write and talk about, oh, Ed didn't handle the Black Lives Matter situation well. You mean to tell me if you had a difference with your boss on politics, okay, or maybe what he said and what he didn't say, I'm going to mess up on the field on purpose? That's ridiculous. Right. That's for the simple-minded people of this world to think that happened.
Right.
In essence, was there, I think at that time, that's friction all over, every campus in America.
Right.
Could Ed have handled it better? Absolutely. But that's not what caused you to have such a difficult season on defense and you to have, the up and down play on offense. My thing is, if it mattered, why did you win the last two games? Explain to me that. Because all I saw in every newspaper, every internet site, everything else was, this team's falling apart. Falling apart after Alabama. Something needs to be, happen. We need to change all across the board. Okay, well, how did that team that is disruptive and a coaching staff who didn't know what they were doing, how did they win the last two games?
Right.
Against Florida in Gainesville, Now, you need a little bit of luck, but I'll take that.
Come on,
and
it's football.
That's the way it is, and beating Ole Miss. And then, it's going to affect recruiting bad. What did they finish? 5 in recruiting.
Right.
Oh, he's going to lose all these juniors and seniors early to the NFL. What's happened?
All recommitted.
So my thing is, if you're such in an uproar about what happened, why don't you give Ed and LSU credit for what they did late? Okay? Now, he set this up. It wasn't right, and we knew it wasn't going to be the same as 2019. But I think a lot of that had to do with, man, we got this. We the national champs. Human nature. Eric, we've been through it in this business. I've been through it in other businesses. Somebody gets a little bit of success, goes to their heads, I'm comfortable. We got it. Don't worry about it. I can just turn it up. And you can't. And then losing becomes a habit, just like winning. You needed to, once you got your teeth kicked in a few times, I ain't doing this no more. This is not going to happen. We got to come together as a group. And I think you saw that in those final 2 games. You wish it would have happened earlier.
Right.
But I think what you saw was freshmen and sophomores saying, man, listen, none of these juniors and senior guys, they're not making plays. We got to do it. I think they took handle of what happened and turned it around. You look at how they beat Florida and how they beat Ole Miss. A lot of those players were freshmen and sophomores.
Yes, true.
And so they kind of took control of the team late. When they knew that there was issues, it was a bad hire with Bo Pelini. Okay, can't even debate that. It was a bad hire. He was a non-fit. He was last one in the office, first one to leave. He was rigid about what he wanted to do.
Right.
And then that becomes, after a while, then you're dealing with a head coach that, he's not too happy about you not wanting to change. So I think you got to get a more relatable staff to younger players. But now, you know what happened? And it's cliche. They lost the eye of the tiger this year. They lost it.
Right.
From the head coach all the way down to the players.
There you go. Well, and hopefully things will get better next season. I got 30 seconds left. Who do you like, Alabama, Ohio State?
Now, I think Ohio State keeps this game close for 3 quarters. Alabama wins by 10. They win it late. Their weakness of Ohio State's in the secondary. Man, and you playing that offense. I didn't think I'd ever see an offense like I saw at LSU in 2019. I saw it this year at Alabama.
Sure did.
It's unbelievable. So I think Alabama pulls away in the 4th quarter. They win it by 10 over Ohio State.
Mike, when you get the draft book out for us?
I'm working on it. It won't be until March. But I'm working on it.
As always, thanks so much.
Thank
for
you,
your
brother.
time.
Appreciate it.
Mike Detillier with us here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program tonight at 6 p.m. on WLAE. Also on the Deuce, WLAE-TV 2 at 10 p.m. On Friday night, you can catch us 9 o'clock on Pelican, 10 o'clock on WLAE, 2 a.m. on the Deuce, WLAE-TV 2. That's Saturday morning. And then Saturday afternoon on Pelican Sports Television at 5 p.m. Always on my social media pages, always on WLAE's YouTube page, WLAE-TV's YouTube page as well. Again, special thanks to Mike Detillier. Also, again, want to remind everybody about catching me on the radio. You catch me on the radio on 106.1 FM. That's weekdays 4 to 6. You can listen live at ericasher.com. Also, the podcast available on all the major podcasting platforms. Special thanks to Mike Detillier for joining us on the program. Also to the WLAE production staff, fantastic staff here at WLAE, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Tommy O'Connor, Tommy Faley, and the best director on the planet, William Hill. I'm Eric Asher for Mike Detillier. Thanks so much for tuning into the program. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.